Our next speaker, this was a tough one for me. This is someone who's probably been like a father to me for the years. I met him when I was in 8th grade in middle school when he was recruiting for the high school team at Woodbridge in Northern Virginia. And it's been a big part of my life ever since. And he is one of the initial founders of Blue Ridge Running Camp. As you can see behind me, showing Ron Helmer on the video screen here. But he's done amazing things, and he's a person who's never done amazing things for the accolades. You know, he's done them because he loves helping people and wants to be involved with people, and this camp is a big part of that. But along the way, with that attitude, he's accomplished a lot of things. I'm going to give you some ideas because I think this is important. He's also announced that next year, into 2023, he's going to retire from coaching. So these are some things I think have missed. You look at what someone like him has done. He's had 407 All-Americans, 8 national champions, 1 National Athlete of the Year, 10 NCAA top 10 teams, 28, Big Ten champions, 52, Big Ten Athletes of the Year, 10, Big Ten Freshman of the Year, 3, Big Ten Coach of the Year 4 times, Great Lakes Athletes of the Year, 12, Great Lakes Coach of the Year, 5. And then before he's been at Indiana for 14 years. Before that, he was 20 years at Georgetown University. He had 213 Big East champions and 15 Big East team champions. Okay, and then some sides, and one of the most impressive things I think he's done, 15 years in a row, he took a women's team that finished in the top 10 at the NCAA championships in cross country. That's still the NCAA record, 15 years in a row, you know, to go and be in the top 10. You can't do that with the same people. That's an impressive stat. In high school, he went Woodbridge High School, where he was the head coach. Before that, Virginia High School in Bristol for 8 years. He was a Virginia High School Coach of the Year in 1980 and 83, Girls Track Coach of the Year in 81. He was the Boys High School Coach of the Decade in Virginia in the 1980s, 45 district, 35 regional, 10 state championships, 9 high school All-Americans. And think of this, there could be another coach out there, but I don't know if there is. He had 13 Foot Locker or Kinney, now East Bay, qualifiers. 13 different individuals in, what was that high school, 10 years, Ron, less? 8? 7 years, he had 13 people make Foot Locker. You know, that's pretty good. So he's done some incredible things. He was inducted into the Southwest College Athletic Hall of Fame in 2004. So, and as I mentioned on Sunday, you know, he has moved beyond the camp now, and but he's come back this year because he loves it, and we want to have him, bring him up here and let him speak. He's done this for years. He's got a lot of topics, but it's always wonderful to hear him speak, and I think he's got some really useful information and words for you tonight, and obviously for someone who's accomplished something like this, there's a lot of good stuff he can tell you tonight. So I'd like to welcome Ron Helmer.
Thank you. Kind of bittersweet. This will be the 36th year of camp. As Danny said, I met Danny in 82, 83, probably the spring of 83. I had just taken over at Woodbridge High School. And I was clerking a middle school meet. And so this little guy about this tall with no hair, he still can't grow hair. He's in the bullpen, getting ready to go out, and I don't even think we ran a mile then. What was it, 13:20 maybe? So we're running 3/4 of a mile, and I'm talking to everybody, recruiting, right? So I'm like, where are you going to go to school next year? He said, go to Woodbridge Garfield at the time, and he said, I'm at Woodbridge High School. And I said, okay, you're my guy. And 37 years later, he's still my guy. So he taking over this camp. I needed things off my plate, but I wanted to give it a chance to continue and to grow. And I'm really excited about what this is going to look like as it goes forward, and really happy that somebody else is in charge and taking the telephone calls and all that kind of stuff that I don't have to do. Hang with me. I'm going to talk about a lot of things. I hope they interest you. I'm going to change a life or two. And I'll try to roll through it fairly efficiently, but find some things that if I were to have asked you, what do you want me to talk about, a number of you would have come up with some of these topics. One of the things I get asked about a lot these days is how things have changed. I've coached for 52 years, getting ready to start 53. So things have changed. They should have changed. But people ask me how things changed in 52 years of coaching, and I'm hard-pressed to come up with an answer. Because going to practice in 1970 feels just like going to practice in 2022. Kids are kids. Athletes are athletes. What it takes to be a champion still is the same as it was way back then. But our world has gotten a bit more complicated, and particularly I think it's gone into high speed the last number of years, whether it's COVID, whether it's our political situations, whether it's how divided we have become, thinking that we need to be clear on this end of the scale or clear on the right, clear on the left, and we don't get the enjoyment or the satisfaction, I don't think, of operating in the middle where we respect one another, collaborate with one another, and succeed with one another like we once did. Social media, guys my age would blame that because anything you do is subject to criticism. Anything you put out there is subject to criticism, and it's almost like you're afraid to have an opinion. You're afraid to express it, or if you do, it's some radically crazy thing that you know people can laugh off if that's what they want to do. I was having a conversation today. I want you to answer a question for me. How many of you in one of your classes this year knew somebody who was a good student who cheated on an important exam, an important project, an important homework assignment? How many of you knew someone in a good class, a good student, who cheated? And that's most of you. How many of, and be honest, how many of you decided that that was okay as well? It's okay, you got the grade. All right. We just watched the World Championships, and I have my jaded view, and some of you probably have your naive views, but of all the medal winners, of all the heroes that we watched perform, how many of them do you think were cheating? You don't want to believe it. In my view, they all were. In my view, drugs have become okay because that's what everybody does, and it was like that in '88 as well. But talking to the people I know, being in this for years, talking to who gets contracts and who doesn't, based on what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do, I would tell you that it's my belief that 99.9% of the medal winners were cheating. And they would tell you that, well, if everybody's doing it, then what's the big deal? And you would say in your class, if all them are doing it and they're good students, then what's the big deal? I'm just trying to keep up. I have a problem with that because that sets the stage for a very impure world, a very impure quest for excellence. So what we're going to also try to do is define excellence, where all that kind of comes from, and try to clear a few of those things up for you. Thank you for being honest. I was talking to an Olympian recently, and she was saying, I really fear, we were talking about collegiate coaching, she said, I really fear for our sport because of all the young coaches who are getting involved who just don't get it. They have a better way. Historically, they aren't interested in what has worked in the past, and it's going down the wrong road. When I first got, and I was talking about things that were going on in my own office. And what I can tell you is when I first got to IU 15 years ago, I got awards for doing the things that I'm now being criticized for. I was demanding. I tried to eliminate options for failure. I pushed. And as I was listening to Mary talk, what I realized was the way I recruited at Georgetown, it was very important that I recruited Mary Germans of the world because she was middle America. She was a good girl. She did not have self-confidence issues. She believed in herself, and to the point that all those conversations she said that we could have, straightforward. If I said, you know what, did you ever consider maybe you have a chance to win that Big Ten championship? It wasn't like, oh my gosh, you're putting so much pressure on me. It was like, oh, thank you. I think maybe I'll think about that. And then she did. And where we've evolved to is we don't want those kind of responsibilities. We don't want those kind of pressures. We don't want to be talked to in that way. We want what we want, and we don't want what we don't want, and it's not your fault. It's not your fault. We've conditioned you to think that way. In the NCAA right now, you hear about NIL, which is basically the opportunity for people to make money because a whole bunch of congressmen who don't have a clue what they're talking about, decided that we were taking advantage of college athletes because we were making so much money and paying football and basketball coaches so much money that athletes needed to share that. I just lost 2 transfer recruits who I offered enough money to pay for their tuition, fees, books, room, and board, and have some left over. I lost them to a way lesser program because they added in cost of attendance, they added in the Alston academic support money, and one of them is going to make about $18,000 above what it cost to go to school, and one of them is going to make about $12,000 more than what it cost above what it cost to go to school. And they have changed the conversation from what can I do here, how can I grow here, the kind of things Mary was talking about, to what do I get? What do I get here? And it's fine. It's time for me to be done and not worry about those kinds of things. But again, I have concerns that now is what drives the conversation. Winston Churchill, maybe 80 years ago, however long it was, he said, we make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. And there's such an important part of that. When we give, it makes us happy. It fulfills us, and it gives us a satisfaction that we never, ever, ever get when we're focused only on what do I get, what do I get, what do I get. And not that it's unimportant. We need to pay our bills. We need to take care of our families. But when that drives every conversation, every decision, I think it's a bad place. One of the famous lines of one of the athletes that I used to help coach, who's now a Power 5 head coach, is I try to have conversations with my captain's council, and all they want to do is talk about puffy coats and snacks. And he said, I can't even get to the stuff that matters. So we've done that to you. We have conditioned you to think that failure is bad, that taking risks is bad, that taking chances is bad. Go for the sure thing. Get as much as you can. That way, if it doesn't work out, at least I'm getting my stuff. We had a staff training at IU 5-6 years ago. And it's kind of on the end of the millennials graduating and the Gen X people coming in. And so they paid a whole bunch of money to have this group of people come in and tell us what we would be dealing with, what the priorities for this group of kids happen to be. And what they said was, what these kids believe is slow is bad. If it takes too long, it's bad. And I'm thinking, for my whole career, I've been trying to teach kids to be patient, to do your work, to put in your time, be patient. And now I've got people who think slow is bad, hard is bad. We talk all the time about we're glad being successful is difficult, because if it was easy, everybody could do it. But all of a sudden, I've got a group coming in telling me that hard is bad, boring is bad. There's a lot of tedious, crappy work that we have to do. In fact, if you'd have been willing to do it, or your classmates had been willing to do it, probably you wouldn't have felt the need to cheat. But sometimes tedium is just what we have to endure and put up with. We can't have instantaneous gratification all the time. Risk is bad. How many times did I say to somebody, have the courage to take the risk? Have the courage to stick it out there. You never know what's going to happen. Mary, have the courage to go for the win. It might work out. And now they're telling me that these kids are coming to me thinking risk is bad. And finally, labor is bad. And I'll talk about that one a little bit later. Those things all fly in the face of everything that I've been trying to teach my athletes. I'm thinking, in order to help them succeed, not just in athletics, but way beyond. And it's almost like we can't even talk about it. We can't talk about being tough, being resilient. All I ever remember my mom saying when things didn't go well was just get up and try again. And it put it back on me, and which is where it should be. I just needed to get up and try again. I don't remember my parents ever going to talk to a teacher about all right. And I wasn't a great student. I was an okay student. But whatever needed to be taken care of, I do remember my dad going to see the police chief once. And that was a short conversation where basically you arrested my son and he didn't do it. And the guy said, yeah, he didn't do it. So dealing with failures, it was something that it was our responsibility, not something that we were afraid of. And over time, we've gotten to the place where your parents don't want you to fail. You don't want to fail. It's a black mark, and it's not. It's an opportunity to grow, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit later. I think what we've done is we've entered a time where those trainers, those people that came in to talk to our head coaches, have been proven right. All those things that they said people thought were bad, they do think that are bad, and we're having a hard time working our way through that stuff. I was talking to Coach Deegan today, and she was talking about accommodations being made for teachers that needed naps, teachers that didn't want to come to work every day. My wife is a prosecutor. She's 56. So she's in that generation who thought you're supposed to come to work every day. And so she goes to work every day. And all the 30-somethings are coming to work like 2 days a week, calling her, asking her to cover their court cases. Because of what? I don't know. That they don't feel the responsibility of coming to work. I had dinner with the parents of a former athlete last night, 2 nights ago. And he's a regional manager for UPS. UPS people get paid a lot of money. The delivery guys, I mean, we're talking 6 figures. On Saturday, he had 22 people just not show up for work. And it's like, what's the big deal? And he said, the big deal is we still have a job to do, and I haven't been home for 3 days. I went and saw a nurse for an appointment, and my blood pressure was sky high, and she says, "What's going on? It's never this high." And I said, "I just came from work, and I got young ones driving me crazy." And it just set her off. It's like, oh my gosh, I know. Our 30-something nurses, they won't come to work, they're disrespectful, they don't talk to the doctors properly, they don't take direction, they all have a better idea, and it's like they're entitled to either come to work or not, whatever they feel like. So it's real. It's kind of where we are. I've told people that for 52 years, I would leave the house, get to the end of the driveway, turn right, because right is where work was. And I went that way because that's where work was. That's where my responsibilities were. I never, ever didn't turn right and go to work because that's what I needed to do. And more importantly, the people I coached were depending on me. And what better way to send a message to them that they mattered and I cared than to be there every single day. But people don't do that anymore. They think they have the option and they don't understand how it affects other people. What about these practices suggest a pursuit of excellence? Are all these people wrong? The people I've been listening to for 52 years. You can think what you want, but Nick Saban happens to be one of them. Nick Saban says, high achievers don't care much for mediocrity, and mediocre people don't care much for high achievers. Think about that, how that impacts the dynamic on your team. If you're the person that goes in and says, I'm doing things right, I'm doing everything the coach says, I'm going above and beyond, I'm taking care of myself, I'm committing to doing this, I'm really excited about seeing how good I can be. And half the team looks at you and says, what's that all about? You're just trying to make us look bad. Or the other way around, when I say high achievers don't care much for mediocrity, how is it that and you are tolerant people, you've been taught to tolerate a whole bunch of crap, but why should you have to tolerate other people's lack of effort when it affects the team outcome? And so you have friction on your teams, and you have to deal with it, and I hope that you're courageous enough to deal with it properly. It causes even friction in communities. My son lives in Bloomington, where I live, where Indiana University is. He coaches at Bloomington High School North. When he took that job, Bloomington High School South won everything. They won all the track meets, they won all the cross-country meets. Now Bloomington High School North wins everything. And he's actually a really good coach, but he goes about it a little more gently, probably, than what I did as a high school coach. He's demanding, he's consistent, his kids love to work, and they love to win. And the payoff is just that. When we work hard, there is a payoff. It might take time, and his kids love it. And I have people from all over the community telling me, or my wife at work, with lawyers come in, and is your son? She said, well, he's my stepson. The guy at North, he's awesome. Those kids love him. And what he then deals with is South parents walking by him, walking by his kids, saying, well, if that's what it takes, if you have to work that hard to be successful, then we don't want anything to do with it. And which is a bunch of crap. Nobody needs to listen to that. What you need to listen to is you've done the right thing. You're working hard. You're committed to your team, and it's working out. Nice job, all of you. And they don't always hear that. I read a book by a former athletic director, one of my former athletic directors. He went to a Jesuit high school in Indianapolis, but he said at that Jesuit high school, he first learned the phrase, to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. I really like that. We all have the obligation to help comfort the disturbed. And we have lots of people who need that kind of comfort. But I think we also have the obligation to stir it up a little bit with the comfortable. Expect more. Push them to do more. teach them to be comfortable being uncomfortable, not just backing away from it and not accepting difficult things. Another saying that I found, actually I was listening to talk radio, which I do, sports talk radio, which I do way too much of the time. But this high-level coach was saying, not everyone can coach great athletes. And I think I've coached some great athletes. And so I'm listening. He says, first of all, you have to hold the great athletes accountable. You cannot let them off the hook. The great ones have to be more accountable than anybody else, because that's actually what they want. Secondly, you have to coach the great athletes hard. You don't make deals. You don't not push when you need to push. You coach them hard because they're great athletes. And they want to see what might be at the end. But if they accept the hard coaching, if they accept the accountability, then what you get to do is you get to turn them loose, because they'll take care of the rest. They will line up and they will race and they will give you everything they've got. That last part is when you need to turn them loose. You can't be out in the warm-up area doing everything for them, carrying their shoes, telling them how to warm up. No. You hold them accountable, you coach them hard, you turn them loose, they'll take care of the rest. Even Buddha, if he was a real person, I don't even know. He says, what we think, we become. What we think, we become. And I think the trap we fall into is we oftentimes start thinking of ourselves as victims. I have to do this. I have to do that. The coach says we have to do this. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. You can accept the challenge, accept the responsibility of what it's going to take to get good and reach your goals or chase your dreams. There are no victims, but when you start thinking that you're a victim, you're a victim. When you start thinking it's too hard, it's too hard. When you start thinking that you're not good enough, you're not good enough. So be very, very careful about how you frame things and how you think. Somebody else already said, what we present, we attract. You need to surround yourself by the right people. Thomas Jefferson, probably 250 years ago, if you want something you never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done. He can't be wrong. That's Thomas Jefferson, right? All through my coaching career for 52 years, those are the things I hang on. Those are the things that frame how I want to think about what this profession and ultimately what life might look like. I've got a couple-minute clip here, and some of you have probably seen it. Duke women's basketball coach, Carol Lawson. I did a little research. She went to West Springfield High School. Then she went to Sidwell Friends, was All-American at Tennessee, played in the WNBA, was really good, and is 41, 42 now. So let's take a look at, this was a couple weeks ago. She was talking to her women's basketball team at Duke as they came back to campus to start training.
I was talking with Shay a couple days ago, and one of the things we talked about was how we all wait in life for things to get easier. Think in your own life, if you've waited for something to get easier. Oh, I just got to get through this, and then it'll be easy. I just got to get through preseason, and then it'll be okay. I've just got to get through my junior year of high school, and then the classes are going to get easier. Or I've just got to get to my spring of my senior year of college, and it's going to be easier. It's what we do. We wait for stuff to get easier. It will never get easier. What happens is you handle hard better. That's what happens. Most people think that it's going to get easier. Life is going to get easier. Basketball is going to get easier. School's going to get easier. It never gets easier. What happens is you become someone that handles hard stuff better. So that's a mental shift that has to occur in each of your brains. It has to. Because if you go around waiting for stuff to get easier in life, it's never going to happen. And then what happens? Oh, it's so hard. Oh, I can't do it. Oh, I don't know when is it going to be easy for me? Oh, it's easy for other people. It's not. It's hard. And the second we see you handling stuff, handling hard better, what are we going to do? We're going to make it hard. we're going to make it harder. Because we're preparing for you for when you leave here. Not just basketball and life. And if you think life, when you leave college, is going to be all of a sudden get easy because you graduated and you got a degree, it's not going to get easier. It's going to get harder. So make yourself a person that handles hard well. Not someone that's waiting for the easy. Because if you have a meaningful pursuit in life, it will never be easy. If you're trying to win a championship, if you're trying to have a family, ask your parents, do you think it was ever easy for them to raise kids? Karen, is it easy? It's not. Any meaningful pursuit in life, if you want to be successful at it, it goes to the people that handle hard well. Those are the people that get the stuff they want. People that wait around for easy, you probably see them at the bus stop. They're waiting for the easy bus to come around. Easy bus never comes around. You've got to handle hard. Okay, so don't get discouraged through this time. If it's hard, don't get discouraged. It's supposed to be. And don't wait for it to be easy. Oh, I just got to get through the summer. And then it'll all of a sudden get easy in the fall. No, it won't. It won't. It won't get easy in the fall. So make yourself someone that handles hard well. And then whatever comes at you, you're going to be great. You're going to be great, okay?
So handle hard better. I talk to my kids often when we're talking about how difficult what we're trying to do is, and I tell them that, you know what, right now going to college is pretty easy. Everybody out there in the workforce, professional world, who spent time in college would love to go back and have the easy days of college. You're going to leave here and you're going to go to work 40 hours a week instead of going to class for 8 hours a week or 6 hours a week and studying another 12 or 15. And 40 hours is going to seem like crazy. This is hard. And then you're going to find that to be successful at what you're doing, you need to work 60 hours a week and maybe 80 hours a week. And as long as you get to a place where you accept that's what it takes to get what you want, it's no longer work. It's what you need to do to reach your goals. And yeah, there's a work-life balance. We all work at it. We all try to figure that out. But at the end of the day, that 80 hours quits feeling like work. It feels like a noble challenge, a noble pursuit. This is what I'm doing, and this is going to help me get to where I want to be in life. We say as coaches, they get it. Finally, they get it. They're no longer worrying about how hard it is. My fear is we're being conditioned to think about how hard things are, how much time they take, and I think that's a dangerous place to be. What we need to do is think about what do we want, what are we trying to accomplish, what does it take, and is that worth it to me? She'll be criticized for taking that approach by some people. That's unfortunate because that was a fairly strong statement and a fairly accurate statement about what it's going to take for her Duke basketball players to succeed, but what she knows is a fairly accurate statement about what it's going to take to succeed moving forward in life. I've got several examples. I'm one of those people who not every day goes well. I'm sure you share that. And it seems like every time I need a little reminder that what I do is worthwhile, I get it. So Irvin Richard was on the first high school cross-country coach I ever coached in 1970. And I've not heard from Irvin probably since 1970 until this past fall. And he called me and he's telling me, yeah, on that cross-country team, by the way, I had Irvin, the black kid on the team who couldn't play basketball and couldn't play football, and he was just my guy. And then I had the shortstop and the third baseman off the baseball team, both of whom smoked cigarettes. I had the manager off of the basketball team. We got 6th in the state, and Irvin was a big part of that. But I hadn't heard from him since 1970. So what, 50 plus years? So he called me one day, Coach Helmer? Yeah. And he's like, so we're catching up, right? He says, yeah, I'm retired. He said, I was a jet engine mechanic. I hurt myself. My leg got infected. They had to amputate it. But I bowled 300 a couple weeks ago on one leg, so I'm doing really, really well. Well, on Father's Day this year, I get this.
Hey, Coach. Yes, sir. Just called to say Happy Father's Day. I wasn't for sure if you did have some children, but you was a father to us. So Happy Father's Day and have a blessed day, man. Later.
So I don't know if you heard that, but I've had several good conversations with Irvin since then. I was hard on those guys. They were a bunch of knuckleheads, and we were going to do something. It was my first cross-country team, and I was going to prove I could coach. There's another guy on that team. His name was Ron, and he got my information from Irvin. So several weeks later, he called me. And Ron was the guy who came to, I don't know why he was on the team. I don't think he ever said anything to me. He walked around with glasses that always had, the tape on them somewhere because his parents just wouldn't replace them if he broke them. He looked at the ground constantly, and he was pretty good. He ran in our top 5 or 6. I had him in geometry class, and I tried to get him to answer questions, and maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. So he calls me, like, again, 50 years later. And we're talking, he's retired too, and bringing me up to date. And he says, I have to apologize, I just never felt like I did enough. And I'm like, don't you understand? None of us ever feel like we did enough. We no matter how we approach it, no matter what we've accomplished, we never feel like we did enough. So I wouldn't worry about that too long. He said, well, what I really wanted to do was thank you because you saved my life. He said, my dad came back home from Vietnam. He wasn't the same person. Our house was terrible. He was abusive. And the only thing that saved me from taking my life was I had some place to go every afternoon that mattered. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm not nice to you guys. I'm telling you how much you suck. I'm telling you how you don't know what training looks like. I'm telling you all these things, and he's telling me that mattered. Because somehow or other, I was communicating the fact that I cared about their success and his success. And so we talked for a long time about that. And like I said, when you need it sometimes, it comes your way. Back to kind of modern day, since I've been in Indiana, I had a girl struggle with some stupid eating disorder stuff, and high school was a mess. And we went to work on it and really held her accountable, really had some good discussions, really got her to cooperate with treatment. And she ends up running 15, 50-something, and 32, 50-something, and is in LA with a big-time job. And when I talk to her, she's like, Coach, I'm killing it. All the stuff I learned, all the stuff that we worked our way through, she said, it just prepared me for all the stresses that go with life. I'm dealing with stuff really well, and I'm killing it. I've got a stepson, the one that wasn't interested in running, but for whatever the reason, Teddy's oldest brother was the one that was supposed to be good. He couldn't stay healthy. Everybody's telling me Teddy doesn't want to run. He's not interested in IU. But he came. He was a 419 guy, 156 guy. He ends up running 148 and 401 and 343 and was an All-American several times. And when he starts looking for jobs, both of those kids were Kelly Business School kids. And some of you know the Kelly School of Indiana, but it's one of the top public business schools in the country and attracts people from all over the world. And they know what they're doing. They have a mission. They prepare people for what's to come. And they both were Kelly School kids. And when Teddy was looking for a job, he had many opportunities, but chose to go with a small investment banking firm, knowing that it may not work out, knowing that he may not have the success he's looking for, knowing that it's going to be 70, 80, 90 hours a week, and he's the bottom guy on the totem pole, and he's going to get the crap jobs. He knew all that, but he accepted the risk of, and he's in Denver, and he's killing it. He had his one-year evaluation this summer, and basically what I got in a text was, Teddy is our all-star. He does anything we want him to do. He's not afraid of anything, and he's really getting the job done. And what he will tell you, even though we had our moments, he's very much like his mother in that Coach Helmer's not always right. I would get questioned. I would get criticized. There would be tense, stressful moments if Teddy wasn't doing what Teddy needed to do. But at the end of the day, what he's saying to me is what I did with Indiana Track and Field, what I was required to do with Indiana Track and Field, that's what prepared me for this job. I was taught to take risks. I was taught that I don't always get what I want. I was taught that sometimes you just have to suck it up and do and trust that it's the right thing to do. And he said, that sets me apart from everybody I'm working with. I'm their all-star. And all that happened was 2 of his guys have worked their way through the system and found bigger and better jobs, and now he's being told that, yeah, you're going to do their work too. Be careful what you ask for. It puts you in those situations, but that situation is the opportunity to prove himself again, and it happens all the time. I had a guy by the name of Kyle Mao, and I got a letter from Kyle, again, on one of those days I needed it. This would have been in June. Happy Saturday. I want to share with you that I recently accepted a job at Insight Global, staffing services with an emphasis in IT this August in Minneapolis. I will start off as a recruiter and move into a sales role. I also want to thank you for your role in the process. One of Insight's Global's biggest values is grit. So not surprisingly, what I learned from IU Track and Field helped and will help tremendously. During my final presentation, during his interview process, he had to give presentations. I talked about the following slide relating to a challenge I faced while public speaking this year as a teacher assistant while in grad school. Little did my interviewers know that this slide is most certainly plagiarized from you. He stuttered a little bit, and I think that's probably what he was referring to as the challenge he faced as in his public speaking. As I was presenting, one of my managers stood up and said, "Oh my God, you may as well be doing a presentation for us. This is exactly what we teach our staff." He said, "I credit you for unlocking my ability to deal with challenges by leaning right into the discomfort. It helps me every day." I tried to have this slide, but it didn't come across on my phone. But basically, it's a couple of 13, 30-something 5K guys, sub 4-minute milers. And what Kyle's saying is the values I lean on, failure is an opportunity. We talk all the time as you learn way more from your failures than you do your successes. Because when you fail, if you've got anything to you at all, fail in important pursuits, as Kara said, things that matter. What you figure out is, I still want to do this. I've got to figure out how to do it better. I've got to do a better job the next time around. So failure is an opportunity. And then he said, get comfortable being uncomfortable. We talk about that all the time. You're going to be uncomfortable. I can't help you avoid being uncomfortable. If you're a 410 miler, if you're a girl who's run 450, you go to an invitational and you run with 450 girls. And then you run 440. And what do they do to you? They put you in heats where the girls run 440. And then if you run 435, they put you in heats where girls run 432. And so every time you improve, somebody just makes you more uncomfortable. So that's the nature of what we do. Just like Teddy, he was killing it. And now he was given 2 jobs he didn't even know how to do. So he's incredibly uncomfortable, but he's not shying away from it. It's what he wants to do. And then finally, you all have heard this over and over again. It's almost cliche. Control what you can control. So the lessons that we learn in this sport, the lessons we learn about running, about life, pay attention. Pay attention, embrace them. How many of you, in conversations with your parents, with your coaches, I think I can be really good, I just don't have any confidence. And confidence comes up constantly. I just don't have the confidence. How do you build confidence? You do difficult things. You achieve difficult things. You try difficult things. When you accomplish difficult things, stick to it long enough to make it look better, your confidence grows. When you back away from difficult things, it diminishes your confidence. I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I might mess up. So every time we back away, our confidence diminishes. Not where we want to be. What we want to do is grow our confidence, and so at the very least, do your very, very best to do difficult things. And if you come up a little short, figure it out. Sit down, talk it through, do it better. Do harder, better. One more video, and this one, I cut a lot out of it, but some really important stuff. My wife called me one day, and she listens to NPR, and I'm not sure what I think about my wife listening to NPR. But she listens to NPR when she drives home at lunchtime, and there was an interview, and they're interviewing Dawn Staley. Do you know who Dawn Staley is? Dawn Staley is the women's basketball coach at South Carolina. They just won the NCAA championships. She's in her 50s. She came along. She said what drove her was she was going to play in the NBA. She was going to take Maurice Cheek's place as the point guard of the Philadelphia 76ers when he retired. She knew she was. She had that vision, and that's what drove her. And obviously the WNBA came along, or a couple different professional women's teams came along. She's a three-time Olympic gold medalist, the captain of that team. She went to UVA, where she was on a national championship team. She was an All-American, and she's now won 2 national championships at the University of South Carolina. This interview picks up when they're talking about how she was raised, and it's going to take 9 or 10 minutes, so just to warn you, but my wife called and said, I just found the black female version of you. And I'm like, okay. But a lot of what, let me explain. My wife was a Carmel mom, and a Carmel mom in the state of Indiana is like a soccer mom. Coaches are always wrong. They never give their kids a chance. They always know more. And then all of a sudden she's married to the head coach at Indiana University and ultimately had a couple sons who ran there. And now she's looking at it from my point of view. And the things that I said initially, she would tell people he's just a jackass. And then it became, he kind of knows what he's talking about. But now she gets conflicted, right? So she's listening to Dawn Staley, and she said, I could hear you saying those things. You've said them over and over again. So, Matt, let's get that started, and then we'll talk about it a little bit and be done.
Was not in existence when I was growing up.
You grew up in the Raymond Rosen housing projects in North Philly. Tell us a little bit what the projects were like then, and you grew up in the 70s and 80s.
For me, the projects was a way of life. Like I didn't see myself as poor. Like my family didn't see ourselves as poor. I mean, we saw ourselves as working class people who worked hard. Like I grew up in the projects, but the lawns in my block were maintained. They were it was incredibly clean. All the people that
These were garden apartments, not a high-rise.
No, yeah. Here's the thing. All of my siblings that are older than me, they had an experience in the high rises. I've never had an experience of living in the high rises, so I think of myself as a little more bougie, because the row homes are a little more plush than going through the high rises. So we had lawns, we had neighbors. My mom planted flowers and they bloomed and everything looked like great. Although my mom had to clean houses for other people in order to make ends meet, but it was a job. And my mom did it to the best of her ability. She cleaned people's houses like a boss, like a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. So, I come from a strong woman who just believed in doing things the right way, no matter what it was. So I just, I thank God for my mother, because she's a disciplinarian. Like, I feared my mother. Like, I did not want to disappoint her.
Wait. Didn't she sometimes use like a cable or a switch of some sort to discipline her children?
Extension cords, switches, anything that was in her reach.
Nowadays, that would be considered child abuse. How did you think of it then?
I thought it was child abuse then, but there wasn't. Not one finger would pick up a phone to call any type of hotline on my mother. But I look at how I am today, and for me, I'm considered probably a hard coach to play for. I'm a disciplined coach because I grew up in a disciplined household, and I know the impact of being a disciplined person. Like, a disciplined person and this is a motto of mine, a disciplined person can do anything. And a lot of people will look at that and say, that's so very true. And it is, because you can be disciplined in something that's not very beneficial to you and be really good at it, and it doesn't help you. Or you could be disciplined to something that's, super positive, and your cup could run up over because of that. So I'm more like my mother today than any other period of my life, and I'm super proud to be her child.
So there's a kind of famous story about you that when you were a kid and you wanted to play with the boys, you'd bring your own basketball and tell them that if they wanted to use the basketball, they had to let you play. Okay, so that was your in, but then what? Did they make it especially hard for you? How do they feel about playing with a girl? Because I know for a lot of boys, that would be considered like lowering themselves in some way.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the newness of having like one girl show up to the court, they're not welcoming at all. They weren't welcoming, and they shouldn't have been. I was treated like a newcomer. Like, if it was a new guy that showed up to the court, they're not going to be welcoming to that person unless they prove themselves. Now, because I'm a girl, they're not going to give me an opportunity to prove myself unless I bring my own ball to the court and hope that everybody else forgets to bring theirs. And that was my end. So that was my end, to get on the court. And after that, if we win, we lost, or if it was a draw, that was my own fate. I just wanted an opportunity to play. And once that continued to happen, I was able to prove myself and become, one of the first players that's picked when we're starting a pickup game.
So you were used to playing with regular sized basketball. Women's basketball the ball's just like a little bit smaller, right?
Yes. Well, back then it was the same size. So we all played with the men's ball back in the day, and then I believe once I went to high school at some point, they changed the size of the ball, and I thought that was the worst thing ever.
Why?
Because I was just used to playing with, the basketball that I grew up playing with. I had a hard time adjusting. I had a hard time adjusting to to the women's ball because it was smaller, it was lighter, and I couldn't control it as easily as I did the men's ball because I was just so used to it.
So you went on to play for the University of Virginia when you went to college there, and you were, it was an NCAA team. I read that at UVA, it was the first time you were really in an atmosphere, an environment where there are a lot of white people. You weren't used to that. Can you talk a little bit about the transition going from, living in the housing projects in North Philly to being at UVA?
Yeah, the housing projects that I grew up in, it was probably 99.9% black. And then I go to UVA, and it's the first time that, I'm outnumbered as far as, black versus white or any other, race. And although, I was a very shy young person. Like I didn't talk a whole lot. I wasn't open to making new friends. I'm from Philly. I'm from North Philly. We just kind of stay in our lanes, and we don't go outside of our comfort zone unless someone comes into our comfort zone. And for me, going to Virginia was a huge step outside of my comfort zone, and it took me a while to make the adjustment to be in that environment. I didn't do well in school in the beginning because I didn't know how to study. I wasn't comfortable. And then, when I was threatened with getting kicked out of school, that's when my competitiveness kicked in. Like I never reverted to my competitiveness until I was challenged in that way. And then I tapped into being a competitor. So I looked at academics a lot differently once I had to. And if I didn't really want to be at Virginia, win a national championship, being in that space, I would have given up. But I wanted to be in that space, and that's the thing that really drove me to doing better.
How did you go from being inexpressive, not making eye contact, being kind of introverted, just expressing yourself through the game, to being a coach where you really have to communicate with people? You're probably part psychologist and therapist as well as, basketball coach, and you're probably shouting on the sidelines during the game. You have to be more extroverted and communicative as a coach.
It really wasn't easy. And I find that just through my life, being uncomfortable, I found a way to grow. And I give that to our players. Like I am I'll give you an example. Most of the players that I coach, their parents, they don't want them to hurt. Like they don't want them to be unhappy. They don't want them to go through life hurting or failing, should I say. Failing. Bad game, bad grade. Just break up with your boyfriend. Like their parents don't want them to go through that. And I am the direct opposite of their parents. Like I want them to do that. I want you to break up, have a breakup. I want you to have a bad game. I want you to fail a test. Because from those moments, growth is taking place. You find a way to not have those repeat performances in those stages of your life. So sometimes my players, they struggle with me because I don't treat them like their parents treat them.
That's interesting.
I balance their parents out.
I want to ask you about a health.
Now are we on? Okay. You guys have been very patient. The reason that struck me so much, we all come from a different place. We all have different stories. And it's all fine. But here's somebody who in the 70s, 80s was born, came up in the 90s, early 2000s, a woman, and we're way more aware of what that struggle for opportunity can look like, a black woman, a poor black woman, and yet what she did was she rose to the top of her sport, and she rose to the top of her profession, and she talked about the things that allowed that to happen. She just did not worry about it. She did not let those things hold her back. She knew what she wanted to do, and she knew what it took, and she was willing to be uncomfortable and work her way through some really difficult things, and now she's carrying that message to another generation of people, and obviously she's doing it successfully because they're being incredibly productive. Well, I've always thought that coaches have two jobs. Our first job is to get you to do what you don't want to do, but more importantly, to get you to do what you don't believe you can do. And how we communicate that and how we massage that and how we push you to do that, it's all different based on our personalities, but if we can get to that point where you're looking at, I don't want to do that. Well, it's like having a conversation with your parent. Your parents are the people who care the most about you and want things to work out the best for you. And if they're telling you this is the way it needs to look and you're looking at them saying, I don't want to do that, they got to figure out a way to get you to where you need to be, because probably 20 years later you'll figure it out. But the more important part, the more difficult puzzle is how do we get you to do things that you don't believe you can do? And that's a whole lot different, and maybe a story for another time. Let's wrap it up here. There's a motivational speaker in Canada. He's got a saying that says, successful people are always looking for opportunities to help others. Unsuccessful people are always asking, what's in it for me? Another saying I like, do what you can with what you have where you are. You will have a powerful impact and influence. You're in control of all that. Do what you can with what you have where you are. Do you know who Herb Brooks is? Herb Brooks was the hockey coach. Remember, what was the movie? Miracle on Ice, when we beat the Russians back in '76 or something, but probably way too long before your time. But he had a saying, risk something or forever sit with your dreams. I read, everything will work out in the end. If it's not working out, it's not the end. Do you know who Phil Knight is? Phil Knight's the head of Nike. He was unsuccessful along the way. He couldn't sell encyclopedias. He couldn't sell vacuum cleaners. He had many failures, and ultimately is sitting on top of one of the most powerful corporations in the world. And this was out of his book, but I assume he was probably talking to his corporate senior staff when he says, the cowards never started, the weak died along the way. That leaves us, ladies and gentlemen, that leaves us. You first of all have to make the decision that excellence needs to be part of your world. Cowards don't do that. Then you need to have the ability to stick to it, to get up when you get knocked down, or you'll die along the way and decide it wasn't worth it. Be strong, don't be weak. And finally, all that's left is us, but like-minded people working together can do some extraordinary things. Have the courage to be different, be patient, embrace hard, do hard better. Understand the value of slow, boring, tedious work. Those of us who are waiting around for that next medicine, that next drug that's going to heal us, we're incredibly grateful for those research nerds who sit in their freaking downstairs little labs and do tedious, boring work hour after hour after hour after hour. How important are they? So anybody who says boring is bad, I would tell you boring is pretty cool. Take risks. all successful people take risks. Value hard work. Take pride in hard work. Take pride in turning right at the end of the driveway and always meeting your responsibilities and doing what you're supposed to do. I may not live long enough to see our country heal, to see our values reprioritized, see people able to focus on others and others' success and others' happiness, but I intend to continue focusing on coaches who care, athletes who get it, as they bring their teams together and show their successes both now and into their futures. Winning is hard, but is impossible if we all don't do our jobs. If doing your job the right way is too much for you, you can't succeed. If doing your job appeals to you, your opportunities for success are boundless, not guaranteed, but distinct possibilities that make entering the arena and chasing your dreams an experience you will treasure for a lifetime. So that's my hope for you. I hope many of you have found something that I talked about that you can take with you, and it'll mean something to you, and it'll remind you what your potential might be and what you have the ability to do. You're at a point in time when you're sorting through all that stuff, and I would just encourage you to make decisions kind of based on the things that we talked about tonight. Give it a chance and see where you might end up, because it'll be pretty cool. Thank you.